right, we are making waves here at DefSec Atlantic, and I want to tell you, there's some great companies in the room here today, but there's one of these companies I think we got to get to know, and that's Kraken Robotics, doing some amazing things out of St. John's, or actually out of Mount Pearl, Newfoundland, over here in Dartmouth, and certainly globally around the world. But that company doesn't just exist based on the technology. That company exists based on strong leadership and a guy with a vision for the future to make this country a better place. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Karl Kenny. So Karl, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Wow, thanks.
You only use two strongs, though, Cal.
You only use strong, very strong.
Yeah.
So thanks, Al. It's great to be here and on your podcast. You've been very kind. So it's been almost 40 years on this journey, and someone said to me the other day, it seemed to be an overnight success. I said, yeah, kind of like Willie Nelson, doing 40 years of blue eyes crying in the rain. But it's been a great journey so far, and met a lot of people, a lot of great people, worked with a lot of great people, and the future looks really, really bright indeed. As you said, I'm from Newfoundland. I'm originally from the southern shore, a small fishing village called Fermeuse. Family has a long historical connection to the sea, going back to the 1700s. I spent my time as a young boy in a fishing boat, lobster fishing and cod fishing with the family, and then when I was a young fella, left Newfoundland, joined the Navy, and I spent 5 years in the Canadian Navy as a Mars officer then. And on the West Coast, Kootenay. Spent some time here in Halifax on naval ops and stuff, but had a great time in the Navy. But at that time, in the early 80s, there was a thing called the PC industry. There was the personal computer industry that was just starting to emerge, and big opportunities south of the border. So I ended up, after I got out of the Navy, moving to Seattle, and after getting my bearings down there and all my immigration stuff squared away, and I ended up working for a small company at the time called Microsoft, and we know where that story went. So I was fortunate enough to be on that ride for a while, and that was the early days of PC and the PC industry, and met a lot of people. But because of background in Microsoft, I was really taken by software and the power of software and what software could do, and how it can change the world. And we've seen, certainly in the last 30 years or more, the power that has in every industry, from medical to travel to banking to our defense sector, the power of software. And it continues to evolve. Here we are now in 2021, and every day you pick up the newspaper and we're talking about machine learning and artificial intelligence, which fundamentally, for the most part, are driven by software and software algorithms. So we're going to see this trend continue, and I have great hopes for the future. Kraken is now coming up on 10 years old. We started off doing synthetic aperture sonar, which is extremely high resolution, high fidelity sonar. Only a handful of companies in the world have this, and they're all typically big tier 1 defense contractors. And then there's little Kraken. And many people say, particularly after we just won some contracts like in Denmark and Poland, and some pursuits here in Canada and the States, is what makes you different. And I really bring it back to the software side of things. We really took a software-defined approach to actually take the hardware cost out of that. So while some of our competitors are spending tens of thousands of dollars to process the signal on their hardware, we're running it on an $800 video game card, advanced video game card, which really changes the bill of material costs and allows the technology to be more accessible to others. So even though it came out of the military side, and tip of the hat to the military and defense sector, we see huge opportunities in the commercial side. Typically in things of what I call seabed surveillance.
Right.
We have billions and billions of dollars of critical seabed infrastructure sitting on the floor today. I mean, many of your viewers wouldn't be able to watch this podcast without fiber optic cables being strewn across the ocean floor. Yeah. So it's this critical subsea infrastructure that needs to be inspected and maintained, and we're really proud to be building the tools and technologies, the sensors, the sonars, the lasers, the robots, that allow both the defense sector to protect us and the commercial side to be able to keep us warm and keep us educated and keep us entertained and keep us safe as well. So it's a bright opportunity moving forward for
Well, 100%, Karl. I mean, and you're around the show here today. You could feel the excitement in the room. The market is the marine sector is kind of exploding right now. People are on the cusp of wanting to do business. Kraken front and center of that. Tell us a little bit about some opportunities in the Arctic. I know that's near and dear to your heart.
Arctic
as
is
well.
huge. I mean, bless our fellows and colleagues in the space sector.
Right.
And, we're reading a lot of stuff lately about Amazon and Elon Musk, and that's great.
Yeah.
I love that. But being a maritimer and being a marine technology guy, my preference is kind of to the ocean, going back to so many years. And with all due respect, I haven't had any food from outer space, and I haven't had any water from outer space. And there's been lots of very interesting discoveries going on in space. But Bob Ballard had a wonderful saying. He's the guy who founded Titanic. He said, with the same budget that NASA has for space exploration, we could do 1,000 years of ocean exploration.
Right.
And what drives me and drives the Kraken team is just the opportunity of discovery.
Right.
That's what's so exciting.
Yeah.
There's so many things out there that we don't know. Like
Right.
maybe there's a cure for cancer or some substance or creature that can help us,
Right.
improve our lot in life. New sources of food, new sources of energy as we move forward into the green environment. So this is not the same old
Right.
ocean industry that's been around for hundreds of years. It's a brave new frontier, and it's the inner frontier opportunity that's really exciting me.
And it's harsh environment to do work in.
Well, you mentioned the Arctic, right? The Arctic is opening up. We're going to see more and more ships up there. And attendant to that are things like safety, security. It's sovereign land for Canada. And this word, some people may take offense to it, but there's also exploitation of our resource.
Right.
Exploration and exploitation of the resource for the common good. It's ours.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to protect it. We need to
Right.
nurture it. We need to be sensitive to the environment. We need to be sensitive to the peoples up there,
Right.
and do things better than we ever had in the past, because people like us, we're getting along, and
Yeah.
you can tell by the color of our hair.
Right.
But there's huge opportunities for the young folks that come behind us, and we want to make sure that the path we lay
Yeah.
is a strong path for them to walk on.
Now, Jerry, I know you're chomping at the bit. You wanted on this conversation for a year.
I did.
Yeah.
Well, I've been in business development, Karl, for 30 years, and I hear your name. I've been in retail business development. It's exciting to listen to you talk, because you've had success in the past. To see you constantly striving and moving forward is what I find inspiring. You may not know that, but you've inspired a lot of people that I know in business development. But what keeps you going? You've had success. Why don't you just kick your feet up and sip a Mai Tai somewhere down in the Caribbean? Why are you doing this?
Thanks, Jerry. Again, you're very kind. I mean, people talk about success, but you can't talk about success without talking about failure.
Yeah.
So I've had some of those along the way as well. It hasn't been peaches and cream all the way forward. But to your question, seriously, what's driving you is the ability to get up. And we've heard greater men and women than me come up with much more elaborate and eloquent sayings along that line. But it is the ability to get up and keep striving forward. Perseverance, believe in what you're doing. When you hit the wall sometimes and you get bounced, Babe Ruth said, every time I strike out, I'm closer to a home run.
Yeah.
That's what's been, the driving fact. Yeah, I've made a lot of money over the years. I've lost a lot of money over the years. It's been an interesting cycle, but it's been that continuum. How can you understand or appreciate success if you haven't had a few bumps along the way? And that's a message I leave with a lot of the young people as well, is that don't be discouraged when you encounter those kind of setbacks. If you believe in yourself and you believe in what you're doing, there's going to be opportunities to be able to pick yourself up and move forward. And that's a lesson that I've learned along my career. I speak to young engineers and business students and high school kids. I talk about Grand Prix racing, F1 racing. the winning race car goes across the finish line not with a full tank of gas.
Right.
It goes across on fumes, but it's a champion. That's how they win world championships. Now, not to say
What
that
a great analogy.
Yeah. And people don't think about it that way, but when the penny drops, you get it. Because if you've got the full tank of gas, you're too heavy and you're too slow and you're lethargic and you're not going to become a champion. Now, that doesn't mean run out of gas. It happens along the way, but sometimes you really got to push the edge to do great things. It's easy to do good stuff. It's that extra edge to make you a champion and do great stuff.
Well, as you're speaking, I think about, and I've watched you over at your booth. You're the president and CEO of Kraken. You're at your booth.
Right.
Well, why?
Lead by example, right? That's what my grandfather said. It's like you're talking before about falling down. When you're in a boat at 5 or 6 years old in a dory in the North Atlantic, you fall down a lot. So the idea is don't fall overboard. So you got to lead by example. And that's what I've tried to do over my career is get out in front, show that taking risks is sometimes necessary. Really, I thought a lot about this, and you try to distill the message down into simple words. And for me, when I think about it, it's basically 3 words that I leave with people is basically you invent, you innovate, and you inspire. And that's been the mantra that I've been preaching my entire career.
Well, kudos to you for being here and being at your booth and doing that, because it's not every CEO I've worked for would do that.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's good, and again, a shout out to the team, the Kraken team. Wouldn't be able to do this without this great team, and we've made some really interesting acquisitions lately.
Yes. I see Moya over at the booth. You got Moya Cal working the booth.
Yeah, 100%. Great team there with Pangeo. Made a couple of international acquisitions. We're I think tracking up to close to 250 people now. Very, very talented men and women. Very, very skilled. I've got still some time left in me. Knock on wood. But the team that's around me and supporting me, I'm privileged to lead, and have a succession to that team moving forward. So, there's still lots of stuff in our pipe. There's still lots of pursuits going on here in Canada, and North America, and internationally. As I said earlier, big opportunities in defense as we start putting machines and doing the dull, the dirty, and dangerous stuff that robots can do versus putting young sailors in harm's way. On the commercial sector, we see huge opportunities in offshore wind, subsea infrastructure I mentioned earlier, cabling, pipelines, new discoveries, heck, even treasure hunting. What's down there? I mean, we have equipment now that's able to go 6,000 meters deep. What's at the bottom of the ocean?
Carl, you sound like a teenager.
I know. I feel like I feel like a teenager, and that's
you
what
look
keeps,
like a teenager.
And that's what. Oh, come on. It's that's what keeps you driving forward. What keeps you excited, and you get up in the morning. You have to get up with that sense of energy and vitality, and you get that out to the team. You get that out to the customers. You get that out to your investors. I mean, this is not the Karl Kenny story.
No.
This is the Kraken story, and I've always said, the Kraken story is not about the boat. It's about the sailors, and I learned that as a young Navy officer. I think I was the youngest guy in my division when I was leading, COM and EW, and learning, the respect and discipline that you need to do to lead people. So it really is about that. Treat people well.
Yeah.
There's enough misery in the world, Jerry. Why contribute to it?
Well, I actually worked from your office 2 weeks ago because I didn't have anywhere else to work. I really
Over here
appreciate it.
in Dartmouth, yeah.
You can send me the invoice on that rental.
Yeah,
but
no worries.
I got to meet a lot of your team, and I can see that, like Dave Shea and all those people.
Yeah.
Very intelligent.
Well, they care, right?
Yeah, you can tell.
That's the thing that we're just finishing a very somber search operation in Labrador, and our team went above and beyond on that, and they stayed there as long as they could because they care, right? And that's, if there's something you try to instill and drill into people is be mindful, be respectful, and really give a heck about what you're doing, because otherwise it's meaningless. And unless you're making a contribution, then you go do something else. And I think for the ocean technology sector and the ocean sector and everything that encompasses that, science, defense, and all the various pillars in the domain, are huge and exciting opportunities for young men and women, not only internationally but here in Atlantic Canada. And we're seeing, our schools, our educational systems, the various universities, the colleges stepping up to that opportunity, putting new programs and training systems into place, educational systems. And we take these young people and export them around the world. Canada has primarily been a resource nation. We've lived off our resources. We've never really truly cultivated and put forward our brain resources. And so instead of being brawn and that kind of thing, it's now time to exploit the brain power, and take that to the world and bring the revenue home, right?
We thought we were going to talk about synthetic apertures, but it's morphed into a much bigger, a very inspiring conversation for me.
100%, Jerry. It's, Karl, a wonderful, wonderful conversation. And normally I have a lot of questions to ask. And I just wanted to let you expand on it. You eloquently laid out a wonderful vision, really quite impressive. I have an honest question for you. It might be a hard one for you, and it might be an easy one. I don't know.
If it's a hard one, I'm not going to answer.
I don't know, but Karl, young fella from Fermeuse, you've accomplished so much, and there's so much left to do, and I can feel that you're ready to make this big difference. Who inspired you at such an early age to make such an impact?
Well, I come from good stock, I can tell you that, and I look back at my family. They've been there since the get-go, through thick and thin, ups and downs, but it's in the pedigree, it's in the DNA. My great goes back to the 1700s, and it was interesting. My daughter, who was just turned 19, she's doing a social studies project at school, and it was about her grandparents. And I said, well, we know our grandparents very well. Even though Dad's passed, my mom's still alive and kicking. So I took her down to where my great back to the 1700s was buried, and there's a little plot in the ground, and I said, there's where you're from. Yeah. Right? That's in your DNA. Yeah. So it's, this long historical connection to the sea, but along the way, numbers of mentors. I've worked with and for, I've only worked for one person, really. That's the Queen. Even though I did some time with Microsoft and some of the other people and characters in the personal computer industry. I never considered working for them. I was always with them. Right. But as a Navy officer, of course, you work for the Admiral and the Queen. Yeah. But I've had a lot of great mentors. Yeah. Read a lot. Great leadership. There's too many to mention. If I start down thanking, we're going to be here for the next hour. Yeah. But it's been everything. It's been embracing the good, learning about the bad and trying to ignore that. Embracing positive energy and not getting dragged down by negative energy. And as I said earlier, try to make meaningful and positive impacts. And certainly in this industry, there's going to be tons of opportunities to do that. I mean, with what I see coming, with the evolution of sensors, the evolution of robotics, artificial intelligence, machine learning. There's so much to learn and to contribute. So, and then pick your sector, whether it's energy or defense. Offshore exploration, discovery. Yeah. Just remain curious, and that's really what's going to drive you. Stay curious.
Karl, 27 years ago, I got Jeff Sterling to come speak to Memorial University, and I put it up on YouTube. I recorded it myself. It's motivated me and many of my business colleagues for 30 years. I've subsequently added you to the list. It's taken 20 years for this to happen. I'm absolutely ecstatic that I've gotten to meet you and that you've shared a lot with us here today. So I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you.
Well, there we were. We weren't making waves there. We got into a bit of a heavy sea state, because when you're talking to a visionary, when you're talking to a leader, when you're talking to a person like Karl Kenny, who's truly making an impact on this country, you're making waves. There's no doubt about it. Karl, an absolute privilege to talk to you today.
Thank you, sir.
Cheers.
Pleasure.